CA each Thursday at 9 a.m. to Veterans News with Hank Whittier from Vets Helping Vets. You'll hear tribute, information on veterans issues, and stories that will make you laugh, cry, and feel proud. Veterans News always focuses on the military, past and present, and on our first responders. Veterans News is brought to you each week by Bob Wine's Camellia Gardens and Nursery, keeping you blooming since 1952.
Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA. Ocala!
All right, 5 minutes after 9 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. One of the things that we do this time of year is we review the year. And if you've ever wondered, wow, gosh, you must have to do a lot of research. Well, each day, every single day that we do the radio show, we type things up, we print things up, and we put them away. And then at the end of the year, that's the big job, is to go through all those things and to try to figure out which things we want to bring up as highlights. The one thing I think would be a cool thing to do that we don't do would be if, in addition to the news stories, if we were to kind of keep a journal of how we felt about the news that happened that day. And that would be a cool way to review the year. Congressman Cliff Stearns has been doing that in his career for 24 years, and he's written a book, and you're going to love the book. It's called Life in the Marble Palace in Praise of Folly. It is written by Cliff Stearns. He's in the studio, the Honorable Clifford B. Stearns. It is truly an honor to have you, sir, in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning, Larry. I'm delighted to be here, and thank you for the invitation.
Do you know what I love about this? First of all, we'll talk about the book, but before we get to the book, I love the fact that we can talk about things, and I don't have to worry about asking about issues that you're going to vote on. Right. Yeah. That's the cool part about this. We get to talk.
There's a lot of them today.
I know, and one of the things that is fun for both Robert and I, it doesn't matter if it's an entertainer or a politician, is we'd like to talk about whatever the agenda is, but then we like to get to know them a little bit. And it's you've been gracious enough to allow us to do that with you in past interviews, and but it's not always easy, because especially when you have listeners who want to know, what are you going to do about this, that, and the other thing. So,
well, also the internet is so omnipresent that whatever you say, certainly if it's in such a way it's either derogatory or it's controversial, it gets instantly transmitted throughout the internet, and pretty soon people, perhaps no matter what their persuasion, get upset.
It is something I think we all wonder about, what life is like for a congressman, and you give us a peek at what that is, and we get a peek more than into your office, but into your soul.
Yes,
your religious beliefs, your political convictions. They validate for us our vote for you.
Well, that's nice of you to say, and that's how I feel. And I think the book has a lot of the aspect, not only of the job, but a little bit about the philosophy and for the struggles I had trying to see what is the right way to vote and what is the best way to make sure that America continues to be the leader in the world and perhaps proactive in trying to solve some of the problems. But having served with 4 presidents, and of course the 5th one, Ronald Reagan, I came in just as he left, so I had an opportunity sort of to have an inside view of some of the enormous tasks that we as a country have to arduously go after and accomplish, or there could be a huge amount of chaos.
Did newly elected Congressman Stearns, when you first were elected, view the walls and the people around you differently than the congressman you were 24 years later?
In a way, probably you do change, but I came to Congress with really no prior political experience.
Yeah.
And so I was sort of aware of the political issues, obviously, but I wasn't aware of the enormous amount of intra-party fighting and the, shall we say, competitiveness between different members to get different positions in leadership as well as chairmanship. And of course, you know, Republicans were in the minority for 40 years, and then suddenly we became in the majority. And that transformed everything, because before that there was really no huge amount of leadership positions available. But suddenly when we became the majority party, the Republicans, that opened up that everybody started to compete for the different chairmanship, subcommittee chair, leadership in the party, and I think that was in 1995 that we took over.
And you championed veterans issues greatly across the country, and especially here in Marion County, in your district.
I was a captain in the Air Force, and I wanted to be on the Veterans Committee. It was interesting. When I left Congress, the last 4 or 5 years, we couldn't get people to serve on the Veterans Committee because so many members of Congress never served.
Weren't veterans, yeah.
And so it was surprising to me that people weren't seeking to be on the Veterans Committee. And of course, we know from a historical perspective, the Veterans Administration is absolutely not meeting our veterans' needs, and it's sort of tragic, particularly for the young men and women that are coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq, and to think that they're not getting the service and the care that they need and deserve, and we should be proud of.
The one thing I think that you were successful in was representing the people who voted for you. It's an interesting thing to wonder about because Congress really is the government. I mean, that truly is. We put so much emphasis on the president, but really, and as you mentioned earlier, the party that's the majority party is pretty powerful in this country. Like it or not, that's just the way it is. So you represented this community, which is the way the Founding Fathers wanted it. They wanted us to have somebody there who represented us.
Yeah, and you get elected every 2 years, so you're close to the people.
Very close, yeah.
I did 565 town meetings in my career, some of as many as 650 people. When I had a town meeting in Gainesville in the auditorium talking about the Affordable Care Act, which is Obamacare, down to 2 or 3 people in Oklahoma.
So let's talk about the book itself, Life in the Marble Palace. I never knew it was made out of marble, by the way.
It's everywhere.
So before we went on, you asked me if I had read the chapter on Newt Gingrich.
Yeah.
Can we jump to that?
Sure. The chapter in Newt Gingrich, I reveal a lot about Speaker Gingrich as well as Speaker Hastert, and not necessarily a complimentary way, because it's not that I was too close, but I think that there was lots of activity by both these speakers, which was, I felt, detrimental to the country as well as not good for our party. The chapter on Gingrich, Newt Gingrich, was during the Clinton impeachment. And without going into all the details of the chapter, because I'm hoping the readers will want to buy the book, but I got back from being elected, and we had, for many months, almost a year and a half, the Judiciary Committee under Henry Hyde, who was the chairman from Illinois. He came up with 4 articles of impeachment, and so we were going to vote on those articles. We lost some of our Republican majority because of the impeachment, because the press created this stir that it was not a fair process, but in fact, it was fair, of course, in my humble opinion. And so we got back, we heard rumors that we would not be voting on these 4 articles of impeachment, which flabbergasted us because the Judiciary Committee spent so many months and so many witnesses, and the independent prosecutor, Starr, had delineated his case in such a comprehensive way that it was pretty much a foregone conclusion that we would vote on these articles of impeachment. But it appears that Gingrich had worked out a process where he thought we could just censor President
I remember
Clinton
that,
and not have the 4 articles of impeachment, and that sort of flabbergasted us, and I don't think the Republican base ever knew about it. So this is revealed for the first time in the book.
Wow!
The maneuvering of Speaker Gingrich.
What do you think changed his heart? What changed him? What changed his mind?
Well, I think if you go back to his activities, which ultimately caused him to leave being Speaker, that was part of it. And I think he sort of felt, and he had a little bit of clairvoyance in the sense he didn't think the Senate would actually impeach the president. Of course, in the House, all you do is you vote to send the 4 articles over to the Senate where the trial is. And so he felt that it would obviously pass the House, but the trial in the Senate would not be successful, and in the end it would probably hurt Republicans. But for him to step in at that late date and to disrupt the process and to say, the House is not going to vote on these 4 articles. All the work of independent prosecutor Starr, as well as Judiciary Committee and all those members, and just say that's going to be null and void, and we're just going to have a vote to censor Clinton and forgive him.
Do you know what it sounds?
Part of his censor was to forgive him.
I know. It sounds like somebody was a good negotiator on the Clinton team. I don't know if it was Mr. Clinton himself, but somebody must have been. I mean, to persuade somebody who you think is very strong in his beliefs, as Mr. Gingrich is, you would think that you couldn't persuade him to change his mind.
Especially this far down the road, where we were going to, within a month or two, vote for these 4 articles, and all the amount of commitment.
That is enough to sell the book right there.
Yeah, the huge commitment of all of us and our base to say, yes, he needs to be impeached. And so to think that Gingrich is going to pull this and change the rules and actually... in fact, if he did that, it would make him perhaps, in the media's perspective, quite a leader and a statesman, and he would get almost glorified for what he was doing and trying to bring peace and restore stability and civility. But for our base, it would really rack them up.
He's a hard one, by the way, to get to talk about his personal life.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to go into it, but I think the people can understand. I'm just alluding to one of the reasons that sort of motivated him to go ahead and try and show mercy to the president at this critical point.
You had spearheaded a bill that was called the Financial Industry Reform Act. If that would be in effect today, would Donald Trump have been able to run?
Let's see, that bill basically, that came about because of Hank Paulson, the Secretary of Treasury. When he came in to be Secretary of Treasury, he had $200 million worth of Goldman Sachs stock. As it turned out, anybody that comes into the administration can sell their stock, their real estate, and not pay any capital gains. That's staggering to think that they could do that. So all these cabinet officials that are coming in for President-elect Trump can sell their holdings so that they don't have a conflict of interest, which is demanding. But, of course, for the president-elect, he does not have to do that. But my bill was pretty much applicable only to people coming into administration on a cabinet level and deputies. But basically it was a good idea because, first of all, American people have to pay their capital gains on their stock and their real estate. Why should someone come into the administration and force him to sell it so he doesn't have a conflict of interest? But 2, don't give him a free ride on capital gains, because it's almost a motivation for somebody to retire and say, I'll go into the cabinet and I can retain all my wealth. And the average common man, when he sells any investment he has to pay capital gains. So why should we have these hugely successful, wealthy people game the system? So that's what my bill did. I did not apply it to the president. So to answer your question, it would not apply to the president. But I think what you're alluding to, the fact is the motivation is the same. If it's good enough for all of our cabinet officials, why not have the president, first of all, make sure he doesn't have a conflict of interest, and second of all, make sure he has to pay capital gains.
And what you're really focusing on there is ethics.
Ethics, that's exactly
and I wanted to ask you something about ethics. Mankind, human beings, we can make laws. Well, we really can't mandate ethics. We can't do that. It's a God thing, I guess. You have to be God to mandate an ethic. There was a story this morning about the mayor of Washington, D.C. I think it was the mayor, right? Who created a bill, and I guess Congress has to vote in D.C. for the D.C. stuff, to make suicide, what is it called? Doctor-assisted suicide, end of life.
Euthanasia?
Yeah, thank you. Those kids in Asia, I'm a radio host. I'm supposed to do that. But anyway, I thought, wow, you can legislate law, but you can't legislate ethics. I mean, if you do something unethical, and I'm not trying to, I guess I did express my opinion on it. But you talk about where is God in the book. We're very early in the book. You say where is God, and a man who has ethics typically has, at least in our culture, some kind of a relationship with God through his or her religion.
Well, and also, even going back to the pagan culture of Rome, there was sort of an understanding of the natural law being that there is a higher sense of value and a higher sense of what's right and wrong, and that intrinsically human beings know that. And the Christian ethics, of course, that I am a member, I'm a Christian and I subscribe to that. The puzzle I had is when I voted, what is the absolute right and wrong for every vote? And sometimes it's hard to understand, but I think there is a right and wrong. And the fact is, historically, both in the Old and New Testament, if you don't have a nation that continues to do what's right, there's going to be retribution. Now, if you don't believe in God, there's still going to be retribution because of this natural law that there's a sense of right and wrong, and you violate that, something's going to happen.
Yeah, and you do express that in the book. The book is called Life in the Marble Palace. It is a great book if you're living in the constituency of Cliff Stearns, former constituency, I guess you would say. 24 years you were the congressman for the 6th district. Then I'm sure you know Mr. Stearns. You've probably spoken to him, probably have gone to a town hall meeting. And when did the book come out, Life in the Marble Palace?
It was published in the middle of November.
It's a handsome photograph of the building, isn't it?
What's interesting about that photograph is that is out the window of my office in the Rayburn building.
Is that right?
And it's interesting, when I first got elected, I got number 35 in selection out of the 35 members I elected. So I had the worst office in the entire Congress.
Really?
In the House. But it's interesting, on the House side, you get a picture, you can get a view out of some offices, some rare offices of the Capitol. And so my 22nd year, I got this office, had number 1 pick, and it's an incredible view at night, and particularly when it's snowing and the Capitol's lit up. So this picture is a picture I took personally right out of the front.
I wish I had visited you when you were in office. Is that your office on the back?
And the office is shown in the back. Yeah.
Gosh, you invited us to come up there,
right,
and Rob and I just never made it. So
well, I tried to. Whenever people came in, they say, "Boy, this is a gorgeous office." I said, "Well, you own it. You're the taxpayer."
Who decorated it, though?
I had Michael Blocker here.
Oh, really?
Michael Blocker from Ocala came up.
Is that right? Wow.
And he did everything for me, which was really a delight for him and me.
Wow.
You had stressed accountability, not just in your book, but also in all your tenure as a congressman. And that's really, really important to the people that you are serving.
Yeah, it is, because, interesting, the House is really an extremely powerful body. And a lot of people say, I want to be in the Senate. It's more exclusive, it's more prestige, but the House is really where the power is. And you have to have accountability. For example, because you're elected every 2 years, you have to be close to the people, or you won't get reelected. 2, all constitutional amendments start in the House. 3, all appropriations of our $4.5 trillion budget starts in the House. It doesn't start in the Senate. And you can actually overrule the Supreme Court in the House. So you have these huge part of the Constitution. And lastly, you have a responsibility for oversight, much more than the Senate does, because you have, in the Constitution, the House's oversight of the executive branch. But too oftentimes the House, particularly even under Republican control, was not providing oversight and accountability for the executive branch. And I think that's part of the reason why John Boehner lost his speakership, because certainly a lot of Republican members felt that you were not providing oversight on President Obama.
And that's why I think you think of Thomas Jefferson as such a hero.
I do. Interesting that Thomas Jefferson comes up so often, because he started the idea that the federal government is going to get too big. And this is when he ran against John Adams for president. John Adams was the incumbent. But Thomas Jefferson felt that John Adams was making the federal government too powerful, and he wanted to stop it. So I think for Republicans who believe that the government is too powerful and too omnipresent, omniscient, that we wanted to limit it. And to do that, all we have to do is go back to read a lot of the quotes, which I include in the appendix, a lot of quotes from Thomas Jefferson in which he talks about how to control and stop the spending of too much money.
Some issues in Congress that we, the voters, wonder about are the issues where party line seems to dictate the outcome of a vote.
Yeah.
It's almost very predictable.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that is something that you would like to see changed? Would a leader, and it could be the president or somebody else, could a leader perhaps be a better influence on the party that is likely to not vote for something that you're in favor of? It is weird to watch the news and say, well, this is not going to happen because the majority is the Republicans or the majority is the Democrats. Robin says this all the time, that once you're elected, you shouldn't be serving your party. You should be serving the people.
Yeah.
Because you have both parties in your constituency.
Well, it's interesting. When I got elected, my congressional district was 66% Democrat. When I left, it was, I think it was 51% Republican.
Is that right?
So through gerrymandering and the legislature being controlled by Republicans, a lot of these districts get gerrymandered, which means basically they move people around to give you a majority to allow incumbents to stay in power. That's probably not good long term, because I know when I came in with a district of 66% Democrat, I had to really look out and understand the Democrats' position, and occasionally I would support them because, you know, I was sort of representing an area which was predominantly Democrat. So even though I was a hard right Republican, a strong conservative, I was much more interested in trying to understand the Democrat point of view than when the district became strongly Republican. And I think in a way, the country would operate better if there was not so much gerrymandering and people were in a district that was so easily to win for their party. They're less tempted to go out and understand the other side.
I'm a little concerned of whether I should ask this question now.
Sure.
But let me just ask you, who or what was the biggest thorn in your side as congressman? Was there a person there or an issue that was always a
No,
thorn?
I got along with everybody. The only problem I had, Larry, was that I became chairman of two subcommittees, the Commerce, Consumer Protection, and Trade, and then I became chairman of the Oversight and Investigation Committee. I did the Solyndra investigation. But to get those positions, you have to fight within your party, and a lot of it's dependent upon how much money you give to your party and how much you give to other members. So it became a remuneration battle, which I didn't think was ethically appropriate, and I talk about that in that book. And then I ran for the Energy and Commerce Committee, which is probably one of those powerful committees in Congress, and I did not win that, but I had to give an enormous amount of money out of my campaign, and in a way, it is demeaning that you have to give money to get a position in Congress, and I found that a bane of my existence constantly because fortunately for me that I did not have strong opponents and I had very low overhead. I did all my own advertising and so forth, so that I had sufficient funds built up every year, so they came after me all the time. So it's really a detriment to this nation that money is so much involved in your campaigns. Campaigns should be shorter. They should be limited how much money you can spend. The Supreme Court would not agree, but back in 1976, before a Supreme Court decision, you could only spend about $1.5 million as a senator running a statewide. But now, you got to spend $30-40 million.
It's an honor to have you in the studio.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Your wife, your beautiful wife, Joan, brought in a copy of the book for us to review. I would like to give it away. If I have a listener who would like the book that Congressman Stearns has written, I'm asking you right now, call, and I'll just take one at random and give you the book, and maybe will you sign it for the whoever it is?
Absolutely.
It's called Life in the Marble Palace, and where can we buy it?
You can get it at Barnes & Noble and at Amazon, at iBooks. It's not right now in the Barnes & Noble store, but you can buy it online now, and we hope in the near future to get it at our local Barnes & Noble.
And any future books and any future politics for you?
Well, I do have another book.
Okay.
But, this one took a little bit of work to get it published, but I do have another book, and we'll see how this goes. But I think, as life goes on, I think after 24 years, you have a lot of insights you want to share with your fellow citizens.
And the feedback has been pretty good. You shared with us one of the reviews, and as I read the review, because I just got it just before we went on the air, I was noting how much of it is what I thought about it too. Reflective essays on your experiences, your nature of your beliefs in freedom, your beliefs in democracy, your religious beliefs, etc. Let me take a call real quickly. Good morning. You've got the book. Who's this?
Jim.
Jim, you've got it. It'll be waiting for you here at the studio, okay?
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And Congressman Stearns, we will ask you to sign that for Jim. Robin will tell you his full name. Thank you for coming in.
Larry, it's an honor. Thanks so much for my invitation.
And Merry Christmas.
Joan, Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Yep, to you and to all the listeners.
We will be right back.
More clues in the Berlin Christmas market truck attack. German police hunting for a Tunisian man, according to local media. Reports say a document was found under the driver's seat of the vehicle, which plowed into crowds on Monday night, leaving 12 people dead.
There was intelligence out there about the possibility of attacks in the run-up to Christmas, in particular